Hi, I'm Rebecca Ball-Carcel. Let's talk about Acquainted with the Night, a poem by Robert Frost. This is, as you can tell by the title, not a happy poem. This poem is about a man taking a walk at night, feeling isolated, lonely, possibly depressed. And Frost himself definitely went through these feelings. He did struggle with depression and some mental illness. He had tragedy in his life, a whole lot of it. And we all do. And so that's why this poem is profound to many people, because it's one human speaking to others about those dark moments. So let's start. Acquainted with the night. I have been one acquainted with the night. I have walked out in rain and back in rain. I have outwalked the furthest city light. Already, first three lines, these are a tercet, that means three lines. Already he is setting up a rhyme pattern. We have night, rain, and light, so A, B, A. And he's going to keep up that pattern as he goes through, where he'll have the rhymes around, kind of sandwiching a line in the middle. Robert Frost is trying to get into a form, a feeling that is very unorganized, perhaps, of the sense of dark, the sense of being isolated, the depression. This is difficult to get your arms around, but in a poem you can, and you can put it in form. You can regularize it, put it in meter, make it rhyme, and sort of neaten up an experience that's actually hard to explain. And I'll say here that the poem overall is a sonnet. It's 14 lines, and it does have 10 syllables in that first line and pretty much throughout. I have been one acquainted with the night. 10 syllables, just like any other sonnet. What's different about this is that he has a set of 3 lines set apart. In a normal sonnet, you would have a set of 4 lines at the beginning, but here we have 3. In another kind of sonnet, you might have 8 lines altogether, not 3. So he's doing his own thing with the sonnet. But I should tell you, Frost really likes form. He is doing his own thing, but he really likes the sonnet and form in general. He has said that to write without the form is to play tennis with the net down. So he thought writing this free verse stuff with no form at all was just like no fun. Like, why would you play tennis with the net down? So he really likes form. And he's putting this feeling into a form in a nice, neat package, even though the feeling itself of isolation, of desolation, of loneliness, none of that is easy to package. Okay, so let's look at it line by line. I have been one acquainted with the night. The night has resonance around it. He doesn't just mean I've been outside at night. He means I am acquainted with the dark moments of life, the darkness of myself, guilt, despair, the difficult moments we encounter in this human life. He is acquainted with these things, meaning he knows them, he's familiar with them. To be acquainted with a person is what we usually say, but he's acquainted with the night, the darkness. I have walked out in rain and back in rain. It's a depressing image. This is not the life-giving rain. This is the steady downpour, the gray, sloshy sort of rain. I've walked out in it and back in it. It didn't get any better. I went out in the rain and it stayed raining all the way till I came back. It's that steady beating down feeling coming through that line. I have outwalked the furthest city light. So he's walked past the light, the clarity, the safe part, and into the darker dark outside the city. You can feel the metaphoric importance there, the metaphoric meaning of I've gone past the easy answers and the simple solutions. I'm out here in the dark, people, where there's nothing clear anymore. There's no more lights out here. This is where I am, emotionally, psychologically. The next 3 lines, I have looked down the saddest city lane. Another image of decay, sadness. A city lane would be like a narrow alley type of thing. I have looked down the saddest city lane. I have passed by the watchman on his beat and dropped my eyes, unwilling to explain. Okay, so a couple things. We met another character in this poem. So up to now, it's just been the walker in the night. And we've had the repetition of I have been, I have walked, I have outwalked, I have looked, I have passed. And suddenly we meet the watchman on his beat. It's like a policeman, and dropped my eyes. The first line that doesn't have I have at the beginning. So he drops his eyes, unwilling to explain. So this interaction with the other human being is not a very warm one. It's more of a separation. I see the policeman. He's out making sure everything's safe for the night. It's a lonely job to have. But our walker doesn't want to explain to the policeman what he's doing out there at night. He just wants to lower his head and keep going. He doesn't want to connect. He doesn't want to have a conversation. He's wrestling with his own thoughts, his own heart. He wants to be left alone. And the watchman understands this. The watchman's just doing his job. But these are the only 2 people around at night. It emphasizes the lack of other people, that he meets this one person. And he drops his eyes, unwilling to explain what he's out walking in the night for. And now we get to the next 3 lines. I have stood, I have again. There's a name for this, anaphora. It means repeating. So I have, he keeps echoing himself, right? I have stood still and stopped the sound of feet when far away an interrupted cry came over houses from another street. Okay, so there's a sound coming, a cry comes to him through the dark. But let's go back through the line, stanza. I have stood still and stopped the sound of feet. I like all the S's. Stood, still, stopped, sound. The feet he's stopping are his own, right? So he stops, the sound of his own footsteps stops, and then it's when he hears the cry. Far away, an interrupted cry. So a cry that gets interrupted. There's a vague sense of, trouble there. Who's calling out? It's just one of those nighttime sounds you might hear. Someone's awake, and it's not in a happy way, but this is not a sound that has to do with him personally, because it says it came over the houses from another street, so from a distance, but not to call me back or say goodbye. So this voice, this cry, is not directed at him. It's not connecting to him. It's just a noise of the night, other people's lives going on. And he's not going to be called back, which would give him a reason to turn around and go home to where it's warm and dry and light. Nope, that voice is not calling him back. And it's also not saying goodbye, like a wishing him well type of thing. Nope, he's just out there alone, isolated. So to read the whole stanza, but not to call me back or say goodbye, and further still at an unearthly height, one luminary clock against the sky. And I'm going to stop in the middle of the sentence. Again, the rhyme is doing what it's been doing, by, height, sky. So he heard the cry, and now he sees something. So we had the sounds, and now we have something to see. Further still at an unearthly height, one luminary clock against the sky. A lot of people read this clock against the sky as the moon. And the moon is a kind of clock, especially a full moon would be a round clock face. And it does keep time. It tells us where we are in the month. Others read this as an actual clock, kind of disembodied in the dark, because if it's on a tower or on the top of a building, the building itself may be obscure in the dark at a distance, and it just seems to float in the air, kind of, this clock face floating. It's really not floating, but it seems to be from the walker perspective, this walker who's out past the city light. In any case, there's a distance here. It's at an unearthly height. It's disconnected from the walker's life. It is uncaring, not involved with the walker or with human life at all. It's just disconnected, doing its own thing. It doesn't care about, it's apathetic. This clock, whether it's the moon or a real clock, does not care about the people living through the night. It can't care. One luminary clock against the sky proclaimed the time was neither wrong nor right. I have been one acquainted with the night. And so we end with right and night, just closing like a little box, the two rhymes at the end, rhyming couplet there. So he says the clock or the moon does not proclaim that the time is right or the time is wrong. It just doesn't say anything. This is just, it is what it is. Like this night, this depression, this darkness, this difficult moment, it just is, and it's not right or wrong, and there's nothing to really do except acknowledge here we are. And then he finishes by repeating line 1, I have been one acquainted with the night. And now that he's explored the night, the watchman that you don't want to talk to, the cry that came but it doesn't have to do with you, the light over here, this clock against the sky, he's experienced all these aspects of the night, the rain at the beginning. So he can say, yeah, I have been acquainted with the night. I am a person who has known darkness, explored the darkness, been in the darkness. And I don't have any advice for you. I'm not giving you the secret of life or how to get out of it. Or maybe he's not even suggesting one try to get out of it. It's just there. And he wants to say, I've been there. I've been there too. For all of us who have been there, which is all of us, I would venture to say. Our lives do have those dark moments, sometimes a lot of them. And Frost is doing something interesting here because by writing the poem, he's actually connecting to us. When I feel isolated and alone with my darkness, I can think of Frost, who is also alone with his darkness, and we're sort of alone together. He's actually connecting by talking about isolation. The poet is showing us his isolation so that we are less isolated. And I love that about literature. Well, I hope you had fun. Well, fun, this is a very serious and dark poem, but I hope you enjoyed looking at it more carefully with me, and that you'll join me for another video sometime.